Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Post Credits Podcast. Today, we're talking about a movie called Atlantic Rim, which is...
and that is, I think that is a thing.
It's totally a thing. That's one of those mockbusters we keep picking on in other episodes where they come out with a movie, like a popular movie like this, like Pacific Rim comes out.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is the movie we're actually talking about. We're not talking about
Atlantic Rim.
Yeah. No,
sorry to disappoint you.
Right. I don't think any. Yeah.
I don't even know if people know about it. Maybe we should point them in the direction. Hey, Amazon link down in the description.
No. No, I'm sorry. Sorry I brought it up.
Yeah.
But there's a whole genre of rotten movies that try to prey upon your brand confusion. So they'll put out a movie that's almost exactly the movie that you want to be renting slightly before the movie itself comes out, or like right around the time that it comes out.
Saving Private Brian.
Right. Yes. Or Snakes on a Train, or stuff like that.
Amityville in Space.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Yeah, well, but that's one of those public domain things that they can't really do anything about.
No, they're screwed.
Slightly different, crummy movie genre. But now we're here to talk about Pacific Rim, giant robots punching giant monsters. This movie's filled with things your inner child should absolutely love. And
yes, I agree. And I'm glad you're saying that, because unlike myself, this is the first time you've seen this movie.
Yeah, you've been after me to watch this for a while, and I
saw this in the theaters. I loved it.
I just resisted because it just was like, I go through spurts, right, where it's like I'm all about like the giant robots for a minute, or giant monsters, or ninjas, or superheroes, or Star Wars, or whatever. And right when this came out, I had just come down off of watching a crap ton of the 2000s Godzilla movies.
Okay.
So I had my giant monster fill for a while. And that was kind of like it, but enough time had passed where it's like okay, yeah, let's do Pacific Rim. Let's talk about that.
Well, also at the time, like Transformers was just coming onto the silver screen as well. They might have been into their second movie, and it's like, well, is it going to be like that, or is it going to be good? You know. My friend Chris was like, I don't know about this new Del Toro movie, and he's like, fucking rocket punches. And I was like, dude, that's what sold me for this trailer. When I saw it, I was like, a rocket on an elbow punching a giant monster. I mean, that just seems awesome to me. On paper, it looks dumb. It looks so dumb. That reads like that's silly. But then seeing it, you're like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So I'm going to be so happy to talk about this.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll get into the weapons, because some of them have varying qualities of satisfaction to them.
Yes, they do. Yes.
All right. So I think that's a good place to put a pin in that, and then we'll be back in a minute.
We'll be back. Yeah.
Who keeps going to see Top Gun? Who?
Everybody.
It literally just
everybody
became the 5th highest grossing movie in North American history.
Yeah.
Who keeps going to see this? I mean, good
I don't know,
because
I haven't seen it yet. So it's not me.
It is a good movie. I just can't believe it's $1 billion plus kind of movie.
For not even like having 20 movies leading up to it, like that, like Endgame or Infinity War.
Yeah.
Didn't have like 10 years of movie making leading up to that one point and everyone saw it. No, it's just a sequel to a movie from the 80s about volleyball and jet fighting
that nobody really needed, but apparently everybody really wanted.
Oh my God. I haven't seen a movie in 30 years, but when they make that Top Gun sequel, I'm going to go.
I'm so there. I'm so fucking there.
Good for it, though.
Yeah.
I hear it's amazing. And it's just like an action movie that everyone wants to see. It seems like that's what I've heard is it seems like it's an action movie that, is a really good one. So and I feel like we've been a little lacking in really good action movies since probably John Wick 2, so
Well, I think it's one of those generational things where people from the 80s remember it fondly, look back, oh, there's a new movie that's not a Marvel movie kind of a thing.
right.
Because the sad reality is like, you wonder why there aren't smaller movies, right? Where it's like it's got to be a blockbuster.
Right.
Streaming has made that impossible. Like we will never put the toothpaste back in the tube as far as that goes. You see a movie and it's like, well, it made twice the amount it cost. How is it a failure? Well, it's quite simple and sad in the
Right.
sense that here's the budget for the movie, right? So there's $20 million. Now you have to put that same amount of money into advertising. Okay, so
Yep.
that's $40 million. Now you come out with the movie, you put it in theaters, it makes $40 million, but you have to split that with all the theater owners.
Yes.
So now every movie has to gross three and a half, four times its budget just to break even.
Right.
That's not sustainable. And I feel like smaller movies don't really have a chance anymore. I think
No, they
that's
do not.
that is where like streaming can kind of come in and make things more interesting, but it's also kind of feeding into that model. And it's a bizarre question that Hollywood really hasn't been able to answer completely. Um, and
Well, there's just so many problems and so many variables and so many ways to watch a movie now.
mhm.
You know, like
Well, and it's disposable. It's like, well,
right. Well,
I
that's
the first
that's the
minute
thing.
didn't get me, so I'll just
I'll move on to the next one.
swipe
You
up, go
know,
on to something else.
and it's yeah, it's exactly true. That's part of it. And then there's not the DVD launch anymore. Before it was like you could see it in the
Oh yeah,
theater,
yeah.
you could own it on home video
Well, and that's back
and
to the
or
theater
rent it.
problem, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, and then the movie gets its release on streaming, and you have to split all that revenue with Hulu,
Yes. Whoever. Yeah.
whoever. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a problem on like a bunch of different fronts, and I think it's almost unsolvable at this point. You
Hmm.
know, because and it's unfortunate because I wonder like where are all the like really interesting lower budget movies, and it's like, well, a lot of the stuff I've seen that I've really liked a lot has been on like premiered on a streaming service,
Hmm.
you know, and not at a theater. It's an interesting thing. And then on top of that, like the movie theater experience used to be extremely unique, right? Where you could only see it that good at the theater, right?
Hmm.
But now it's like we've got these fucking amazing TVs, these amazing 4K players.
Hmm.
Now you get that same image quality if you're willing to spend a grand or two on a home theater system. I mean, like your projector is pretty amazing,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like now you can get that image quality at home and not have to deal with jackasses throwing up from drinking too much vodka in the back of the theater, you know? So,
Yeah, or just people running around because they're using the movies as a babysitter or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that blows my mind. Like, just seeing an older movie. Like I went and saw Jaws this past weekend. You and I were talking about that a little bit before we got on stream here, and there were kids running around, but it's like,
It's
like I'm looking at this. It's like, man, uh, I never saw this on VHS.
right. Right.
That girl's naked. She's totally naked.
Right.
But people in 1975, like, even still, I feel like the theater experience is probably cleaner than what they would have got, because with digital presentation, the film doesn't degrade. So you don't
Right.
get the scratches on it from running it through, just grinding it through day
Sure.
after day after day after day. Um, I don't have any grander thoughts on that. That's just something that I was just
Well,
kind of
it's not something we can
spitballing.
solve.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah, no, it's not within
where
our power.
it's at. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, all right, man.
let's have
So,
it.
Rings of Power's out now,
Okay.
and
The-
it's kind of interesting. I haven't watched any of it, so I'm not going to comment on if it's
mhm,
a shit show or if it's something worthwhile. I don't know. I'm
mhm.
not really interested, but that's beside the point. This is the first time that I've heard of Amazon not allowing reviews on a movie or show on their website. They have banned reviews for Rings of Power for 3 days because of the, I guess, perceived backlash on it.
Mhm.
There seems to be people that are very vocal about how much they hate it. But even when you go to like audience reviews or critic reviews, it seems like it's pretty high, like enough for be like, oh, that looks like it could be good, you
Yeah,
know?
like
But
80% on Metacritic.
right. Yeah, that's like, I think if it's above 70, you're good to go. It's probably finding some sort of entertainment value in that, you
Uh-huh.
know? So that's really funny. And it makes me wonder how bad the reviews are. Like, is it just full of like hatred? You know, like we can't have any more of this type of review on
Mhm.
our website because of how bad they are. I've never heard of that. I've heard of YouTube videos having the comments turned off, but it's usually because there's some sort of controversy that has happened
Yeah.
revolving around the creator,
Yeah,
you know?
or the community has turned toxic for whatever reason.
Yeah, yeah. Or if it's like
That
political stuff, you
yeah,
know?
that seems to be my sense is like people who've already made up their minds to
Hate
not
on it.
not like the show before it even came
Right.
out.
That seems to
And
be the case too. And now it's like, hey, review. I can review it now. I haven't seen it,
yeah,
but now I'm
right.
just gonna throw up some comments. You know?
Or I've already watched it even though they've made up their mind to hate it and then just invented made up
Yeah.
reasons to hate it for it's like,
Right. Yeah.
it's so fascinating too because like Star Wars kind of has the same problem with the fan base where like, hey, here's a new Star Wars thing, give us new Star Wars, we hate this to death. It's like, but they gave you the thing that you were asking for, but I don't
Right.
know. Nobody
I
hates
mean,
Star Wars like
I
Star
am
Wars fans, and
that's
the
true, and
Lord of
I
the
am
Rings
I'm one
series
of those
seems to
haters.
have kind of the same hang up in its fandom.
Yeah, I see it time and time again, especially like when The Hobbit came out. I don't really have a problem with the Hobbit series or trilogy, right?
Hmm.
But man, there are some people that I know that just they hate it. And I was like, it's not as good as Lord of the Rings, but it also didn't really get under my skin. You know, it's just
Yeah,
like
right.
that was fun. I watched them each a couple times, you
Hmm.
know? So hey, I got my money's worth, but I don't know. It's interesting. But I am a hater of Star Wars. I'm in that camp, but it is limited to two instances, not the whole thing, not all of Star Wars. It's two very, and I can give you very specific reasons. I've
Yeah,
thought about them for
yeah.
decades at this point, you know.
It's been
But that is not,
well documented.
yes, that is not for this podcast episode. Maybe sometime we'll have like a therapy episode where I just go into
Oh,
like all the reasons that I don't like Star Wars in these
that
two movies, you know? So,
yeah, that could be a fun live stream.
yeah. You giving me therapy? Sorry it hurt you, Matt. We've been talking about it for 4 years now.
Okay, all right.
So, anyways, yeah. I don't know.
I guess where do you want to begin? Because we were talking about this beforehand. Like you said, I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it before.
Yeah.
My thoughts are gonna be a little bit more general, whereas you've got some of the more like juicy deep dive tidbits.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess we can start with like how this movie came about at all. And it's kind of like a couple things. Like Guillermo del Toro, he wanted to show off his love for Godzilla movies or, you know, kaiju movies, not specifically Godzilla, but you know, that's what people mostly know, you
Hmm.
know. Uh and then there was like this interesting thing that happened. He was going to be making H.P. Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, and Tom Cruise was going to be in the main role.
He was attached to star, yeah.
Yeah. And there was some sort of like, it's kind of foggy how it all came together, but he wanted more money and the studio wanted it to be a better rating than R. And I mean better by like PG-13 or PG for making
When you
money.
say he wanted more money to make the movie, not for
Right.
to pad his salary.
Right.
He wanted a
He
higher
wanted a
budget for the
higher
movie.
budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of at the same time, a spec script for Pacific Rim kind of landed on his desk, right? So he's really passionate and he really wanted to make At the Mountains of Madness, but he was not seeing eye to eye with the studio. But when he saw Pacific Rim, he was like, "Oh, this could be like a really interesting story and kind of up my alley with what I've always wanted to do." And so what he did was he said, "Okay, look, I don't want to compromise with At the Mountain of Madness, but if you cancel it, I'll do Pacific Rim."
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened. So that discussion happened on a Thursday. The production of At the Mountains of Madness fell apart over the weekend. On Monday, he signed on to do Pacific Rim. It was kind of like that quickly, you know. So that's how the production started for this movie, you know, which is interesting. You know, I would have loved to see him do At the Mountains of Madness. Just because of his visual style is so appealing to me, at least. You know, I love, except Mimic. Mimic doesn't really seem like it's one of his movies, even though it is. Although the rest of his movies seem visually similar. So
yeah. Well, I mean, like Blade 2 is just fucking cool. I mean, it's just
yes.
And I guess that should have been a good sign for a movie like this, that where it's just like, no, you're just gonna have a good time because like he really knows how to make things look cool, but not in like a Michael Bay, Zack Snyder,
yeah,
car commercial kind of way. Like it's just like really cinematic, cool, like using the tricks of cinema to.
Oh, exactly. Like the sense of scale, I think, is really impressive in this movie. How big these creatures are. And it's like all the camera work is done from like the street level, looking up. You know, it's never like you don't see too many shots where it's like looking down or on eye level with the monsters. It's either like if it is, it's like, oh, you can feel like you're in the building. Like when they're in the city, it's like you could be watching it from your office in these skyscrapers, you know, or you know, like you'll see them when they were like bringing towards the finale, like when they were bringing the two last Jaegers in, they're like flying them in with helicopters, and it's like we're on the sea looking up at like all this water falling off them, you
it's
know,
like
and
we're in a boat, filming it. That's something that a visual effects artist told me one time, where like people who don't quite compose their CG in compelling ways, they kind of idealize where the camera should be placed. And the way it was described to me, because it's exactly what you're talking about, I'm hearing this all come flooding back, is like, imagine you're doing like a CG jet or like a spaceship, right? Okay, where do you want to put your camera? And if this was real, where could you put your camera? So if in the case of a jet, you would have to be in another jet filming it. So you couldn't necessarily be like out in front, orbiting around, side to side. You have to think about where you could realistically put your camera if this was happening. And that's totally what they did here with a lot of like we're on top of buildings, but they're so much taller than buildings.
yeah. I love that. And then the colors. I would even go so far as to say like what the colors are in this movie like has influenced artwork that I make, because I want that like contrast of that like super saturated dark that's not black. It's always like a blue or something, but it feels like it's black. And then these like almost neon colors going in the opposite direction. It's like that complete contrast, like from the way down deep to really up high, you know, and like very little in between. So it's always really appealing to look at. And I feel like even in Godzilla versus Kong, when they were in Tokyo battling, I feel like it was trying to rip off Pacific Rim. It's
Okay.
almost the same color composition, color theory, or whatever, in that small segment compared to this entire movie.
Yeah.
All
All of them.
Yeah.
That's got to be a hard thing to art design, because it really does, similar to Las Vegas, it really does feel like kind of an assault on your senses. But
yes,
but there is a style to it where it's not just kind of like, motion graphics vomit. It's like, no, there's a reason behind this neon. Let's come back to the sense of scale just for a minute, because like this is one of the few dinner party facts that I have about the making of the movie. Now, 3D was big at the time because Avatar came out in like 2009, I think.
Yeah.
And so there's a big push to get a lot of, especially big spectacle movies like this into 3D. And there still kind of is, even though they don't release them in 3D anymore. But so I didn't watch this movie in 3D. I know we keep harping on that just because out of coincidence, like that's 2 3D movies I watched in 3D in a row.
Right.
Did not watch this one in 3D. I watched it on HBO Max, but it was interesting because when I was doing my research on this, he was against doing 3D for it, because of the sense of scale. Because when the creatures are so large, he felt like in order to get like a good sense of parallax for the camera happening, you would have to kind of humanize the scale of them. And he did change his mind kind of mid-course, and apparently the 3D post conversion for this movie took 40 weeks.
Oh my god. That's like a third of the whole production time. Right? No. 40 weeks? No. Oh,
yeah.
No. I'm way out.
Were they going as they went, or was the movie finished for almost a year?
Right. Yeah, like when did they finish making this movie so they could do the 3D effects? Yeah, like that is such a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because I still can't see it, so.
Yeah. Well, and then he made some crack about like, well, what do you want? I'm not running for office. I changed my mind.
Right. Right.
Sue me.
So now, after you've seen the movie, let's talk about your thoughts on it for a minute. Not having seen it when it came out, you just saw it a couple days ago. What are your thoughts?
I liked it. I thought, you couldn't help but have fun with it because it was stylish. There's a lot of stuff that you should probably stop to question that you really don't.
Oh yeah, like what? What exactly is that? I have some that's like, okay.
Yeah. Like the whole concept of the drift, they don't really they don't really touch upon that. I think there's story reasons for that, because they want to tie the people into the machines, but also give you more of a relationship, a more of a personal connection to those characters. So their pseudoscience reason in this universe is that you need 2 people to share the neural load.
Yeah. To operate the mechs. Yeah.
Yes, because it would be too much for one person's brain to handle.
Right.
That's a bizarre concept that can only exist because you want to have this buddy dynamic and this personal connection between these characters, and not in a Top Gun, you're my bro, wingman, bro kind of way.
You can ride my tail every day. That's what Val Kilmer says right at the end of the movie.
But you know what, though? That I think that's what really sets it apart from something like, like a Robot Jocks or any of these other movies, whether it's a Top Gun or whatever, where it's like the man and the machine relationship, and I think that's fascinating.
It's as cool, like it's equally as cool as it is silly, because of like it's like, oh, I kind of get it. Like, oh, it's this big machine. Like you would have to have more brain power to operate it or it'll kill you, right?
Hmm.
But then like the whole drift compatibility thing is like,
Never explain it.
yeah, right, right. And it seems like it works great or better if you're family members, right?
Hmm.
Or strangers. So it's like, does it even matter? Like, why do we even? Because it's like he doesn't know Mako until he gets there, and then he's like, "We're so drift compatible, bro."
Yeah, because we had a fight. I mean, it starts out as this like, will they, won't they meet cute kind of
Yeah,
romance thing,
right,
which never comes to fruition. Which, whether you find that frustrating or not, I didn't care.
right.
Um,
I didn't.
but yeah, they have to have their bow staff fight in
Right.
in order to, But then there's like no further I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah. So bow staff fighting, and then you're like drift compatible. If you can equally beat each other up with the bow staff. Follow up question though: does it even matter at the end of the day? Because it's still like what comes after like this stuff of being drift compatible is some really awesome fight sequences. So it's like I guess like it's one of those things where it's like you could critique it, but then like the stuff that comes out of this kind of silly idea is still pretty cool. You know?
well, they even try to apply that to the monsters too, because they use kind of a like the dinosaur concept for the kaiju, where they kind of need like multiple brains in order
Yeah.
to, because they're so large. And when Charlie Day's character goes in there, I mean, it's all very loosely connected, but they
Right.
do still kind of try to use that concept to justify, like, oh no, see, like, even in biology you need two brains to move something this massive.
Right. Right. Which
I
it's still fine, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think this movie has some things that are just kind of like out of its depth, but then at the same time, like it doesn't really matter because it's not doesn't take down the story, or like numerous other action movies set around certain IPs. We don't need to get into them specifically, but it's like some of the ideas that they bring to the table are just like, oh, that's dumb. And it kind of hampers the story where it's like, this is a thing that happens in the movie, but it doesn't really sacrifice anything for the enjoyment of the movie, or
With
its story development,
Yeah,
So,
with something like this, there's kind of a natural sense of wonderment when they're building the world for the first time and you've never seen it before. And to not get bogged down in the minutia of that the way that a lot of futuristic movies do, I think works to this movie's credit. And you just kind of go with it, which isn't to say that there isn't an art to that, because a lot of movies will introduce things and just kind of skate past them, and you're like just kind of frustrated, left with this like, what, but the thing, huh?
yeah, right,
And I think the fact that you just kind of go with this,
right,
once you start pulling at it, it's like, well, I mean, you could call this kind of a dumb movie, but it's done well, and you do tend to just go along with it. So
right.
it I think it's an example of like how that's done well.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Because like I don't know, this is probably one of my favorite action movies ever. It's on a short list. With like Die Hard, Speed, uh, a lot of those types of movies.
Hmm.
I've seen this movie so many times, probably like 20 plus times.
Oh wow.
Multiple formats. Same type of thing as like The Thing. It's like, all right, I guess I'm buying this. If they do like 20 million K,
Oh
it's like I
yeah.
guess I'm buying
This.
Pacific Rim again. you know?
You know what? It might hold up, because like I was watching this on HBO Max, and I will say, out of the different streaming services, I don't know what your opinion is, but I feel like Disney Plus and HBO Max have the best streaming quality.
Oh yeah.
They don't seem as like buffery or as throttling as some of the other ones. I mean, your mileage may vary. I'm just watching it through my smart TV,
Right.
and maybe the apps are just better optimized on those. But I'd watch it through my PlayStation 5. But you know,
Well, I'll
that
say
thing's
that
kind of a power vampire, so I'd rather just use it to play video games instead of.
right.
But the CG really held up. Like, I mean, for a movie that's 2013 is when this came out.
Yes. Yep. 2013. Yeah, it's 9 years old.
Which
Yep.
isn't to say that, like, oh my god, that's in the Stone Ages. But the way that Jurassic Park holds up, I feel like Pacific Rim is at a level of parody that holds up to practically anything that comes out today. Whereas Avatar came out in 2009, and I watched that fairly recently. And at the time, it was some of the best CG ever. And it still looks pretty good, but I feel like we've passed that.
Right. Like
And
the median quality of CG is now past what Avatar was. Yeah.
it's still in the upper echelons of like really damn good
Yeah.
looking, but it's not like best in class anymore.
Right. Right.
This new one might be, but I feel like Pacific Rim, man, I don't know. I feel like it's probably up there with just some of the best CG that of anything that's coming out today, and we're almost 10 years later.
Right. Well, I just part of it I think is like there's so much like eye candy to look at. There doesn't seem to be like any kind of wasted space with like camera work. I say camera work because it's like when you're talking about action with giant robots fighting giant monsters in the city, it's like, okay, well, should it just be called an animated film at this point? So but it does a great job of that, of being able to like flesh out all the little details that you see everywhere. And I think that's part of the reason why it still holds up as far as like that CGI quality goes. Because I mean, like it's raining most of the time, and you're just seeing like this water like flow off like the monsters moving or from their mouth, or and then they got that like kaiju blood that is thicker than water. So even in underwater scenes, like it's still kind of like flowing out of their mouth instead of becoming this cloud of blue around them.
The
Yeah, I
water
love it.
did look absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
It just like the way that the waves were crashing, and then the way that they're moving their fists around through it. I did find that a lot of that was very art directed. It wasn't like happy accident. We have this procedurally generated ocean, and that's just physics at play with really crazy systems. It was like, hey, I kind of want this wave to do this thing like this painting, and he would show ILM artists, like John Knoll, who worked on like the Star Wars prequels, paintings of what he wanted the waves to look like and to be doing. So that a lot of that stuff was kind of like custom wrangled, and it's just chef's kiss.
Yes. So let's start talking about like the fight sequences or the beefy part of the movie. I can't say anything bad about like how exciting these sequences are. Like it's just amazing to me. Where it has this quality, or this whole movie has this quality of like ratcheting up, like the action. And it starts off strong, and sometimes you have movies that it's like it has a strong opening, and then it's like it doesn't get any better than that. Like the movie could still be great, but as far as sequences go, and it just seems like the next sequence is more crazy than the one we saw.
Yeah.
And it just is like, we're gonna go further. We're gonna go further, Like, and then you have like the lizard. Like, I think one of the coolest sequences that I've seen in such a long time is when he's fighting the serpent one with the wings, and it goes from like them fighting in the ocean in the bay outside of the Shatterdome, which reminds me of the Danger Room from X-Men, and then he beats the hell out of that ape one, and then now they're in the city, and it's like, oh, by the way, this one has wings too, you know, and then you get the whole sequence of them fighting each other, you know, up
Mhm.
into the upper atmosphere and then crash landing down. 50,000 feet is where Gypsy Danger got dropped from. You know, it's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just
That's
awesome.
wow. Yeah, no, it is, and I didn't think that thing had wings, and that, but that's when it was like, oh, they're kind of doing like the um, I forget which Godzilla character that was referencing, because I know that some of these were references to different ones, because like the knife head was kind of like the more plotting, like,
Right.
you know, guy in a rubber suit, kind of on all fours, kind of like slapping his way through the building, kind of like Anguirus, I think is the name of the Godzilla one.
Okay.
That's like that.
I'm.
But what's that?
Oh, I was gonna say I'm still not as familiar with all the monsters in Godzilla. And I probably couldn't name anyone. I would have to tell you the movie I saw it in. You know,
Oh,
like it's this one. Yeah,
yeah.
I was in the end of that one.
It
You know.
used to be easier because they used to be called Godzilla versus Monster X, Godzilla versus this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they started trying to be clever with it, but
Side tangent, real quick, as we normally do. I think I found a new Godzilla movie that gives the Matthew Broderick Godzilla movie a run for the money as far as like how bad it is.
it's part of the actual canon.
Yeah, yeah, it's the one after Godzilla 2000, and it's the one where they create a black hole for to throw Godzilla into. It's like they make this giant gun and it can shoot a black hole on Earth. And it's just so stupid. It's just such a letdown. We were riding high, like, and that one just
Godzilla 2000, and then
yeah,
that
Godzilla 2000 was awesome.
yeah, that
Yeah.
crater is where the next movie lands.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I feel like it X Mecha Godzilla, is that the next one after that?
I think so.
And then it's Tokyo SOS, and then Final Wars.
There's 6 in there from that's in the Millennium arc.
Oh,
There's
okay.
6 movies. So
Well, four of the five of those that we mentioned are really good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It did take the wind out of my sails for a minute, so I got to get back into it. But I do like them. I do like me some Godzilla movies finally. So
Yeah, yeah,
tangent over.
yeah. I like that Millennial series, but
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
yeah, Del Toro called this a conscience of the heritage, but not a pastiche, or an homage, or a greatest hits. And
Those are a lot of fancy words. What does that even mean?
Well, he wanted to be conscious of those movies.
Yes.
But not like, hey, we're doing our own version of that. Like, he wanted to introduce new concepts that you've never seen before, and he did. Like, he did a couple things that we've never seen in 20 plus Godzilla movies, with the kaiju birth.
Yeah,
that weird sloppy kaiju birth.
I love Ron Perlman in that sequence. Like, that's awesome. Where he was like out of breath trying to get back on camera, and then he throws the knife at him, and you know, because his lungs were not fully developed. You know?
Oh yeah, right.
So he's saying what he can't. He's saying the things that's causing him not to breathe either, which is what I found funny. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I just took it like he was being a dick for running away, and then he was making fun of Charlie Day for being scared. When it's like, well, you ran away too, like, you know.
Yeah.
As one would, because you're not just gonna go toe to toe with that thing and punch it out. Like,
I would fly to a different continent. I wouldn't even be in the same block, same city block as that creature. I'd be like, next flight out of Tokyo, please. Where to? Anywhere but here. You know.
On the subject of Ron Perlman, I couldn't help but feel like he looked like a Final Fantasy character, like especially newer Final Fantasy, like the way that he was dressed with the glasses and everything.
Glasses, and then his shielded shoes. I don't even know what to describe them as. Yeah, armored shoes.
Yeah,
you know,
his fancy steel-toed combat boots there.
Yeah, yeah. What was the other thing? I think another one, because I think I read part of the same thing. Maybe I didn't have it in my notes, but he said he also wanted to show the perspective of a monster attack from like a child.
From a child's perspective, yeah.
Yeah,
Which you saw in the flashback for the Meiko Mori character.
yeah, yeah. Which is intimidating. This just giant crab. Imagine being like 5 or 6 years old. You're in an alley.
Mm-hmm.
This crab's like, come here. Ah, I gotta kill you. You
Yeah,
know,
and
that'd be
you're just
terrifying.
your parents are just gone. You just don't know what's going on. It's just
Right, right.
yeah.
Hey, can we go back to the drift thing? Can we like dissect the drift a little bit more?
Can you explain it to me? And then maybe yeah, sure. Let's talk
Well,
about that because they sure
well,
don't.
okay. Yeah, well, I almost feel like they're kind of like the drift almost feels like it's like force powers from Star Wars, you know? Because he was like, Idris Elba was saying to Mako that like I'll always be in the drift. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, is he really going to always be there? Like his soul is in the drift, or it's just like she can access the memories of him in the drift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like he was just it was just kind of like a futuristic way to see you on the other side. I didn't feel like it had
Oh, okay.
any
I just read
more
too much into it.
magical force connotations than it probably already feels like it does, because it's like, hey, we had this bow staff fight together, so now we can walk in perfect sync, which looked really
I know,
cool
I
with
know.
like those treadmill things that they're on. That looked neat, and then they're doing these kind of things in perfect
Harmony.
synchronicity. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like you would need a little bit more training than like, let's just beat each other's ass with a bow
The
staff
bow
for.
staff. We got bow staff skills, bro. Like we're good to go. We can, now pilot this how that 1,000,000 pound mech suit,
Mm-hmm.
and, I don't know, save the planet, cancel the apocalypse, you know.
Yeah, we're canceling the apocalypse today. That was uh, yeah, you could. I don't know. Did you think that was cheesy? I thought like, oh, that's.
Super cheesy,
But
but
it's a different way of saying it. And when Urgis Alba says it, I mean,
yeah, he put some respect on it, you know.
yeah,
He doesn't say it in any dorky, like ironic connotation at all. But I
yeah.
think it works.
Whereas if I read this Bill Pullman speech from Independence Day, you'd probably be like,
Yeah. And
yeah,
today
we're not getting behind that guy.
is our canceling apocalypse day. It's just no. Here's what I like about that line, and I think here's why it also works in this movie. I don't think it can work in any other movie, like any other apocalyptic movie, whatever it may be. Like we're gonna. It's our rally cry to cancel the apocalypse. I don't think it'll work. So I think because this movie is so over the top in so many other scenarios that when dialogue is over the top as well, it also fits in what we've already seen so far, where it's just like, this is bonkers. And then you have Idris Elba, who's like an amazing actor, saying, today we cancel the apocalypse.
Well, I mean, I feel like the movie wasn't full of lines like try hardy lines like that, which it is probably why it stands out as really good in context. Because if it
Yeah.
was, you'd probably be exhausted from just getting hammered with like dude bro shit for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
characters for the most part that are a little more idiosyncratic are like Charlie Day and the other doctor with
Yeah.
their like bickering back and forth.
Yeah. I like those two together. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it all fits. Like, I don't really have a problem with the dialogue, even though if you were to like just read it, it sounds ludicrous,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. Don't have a problem with it. But I think it all fits together really nicely. These crazy monsters, these like robots, and then this crazy dialogue. It doesn't seem like it's out of place. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, you were saying you had some interesting facts about Del Toro.
I do. And I don't ever really like get into like directors or I shouldn't say directors, but like the pasts of people, you know, or but I found Del Toro to be really interesting. It's pretty fascinating. And usually like when I have a list of these, I put like fun facts about this movie, you know, so I can
Hmm.
see it at a glance when I'm looking through my notes. But it's like I can't even really call them fun, just interesting. So we'll start from the top, I guess. So Del Toro turned down a chance to direct Blade Trinity. Obviously, he would have been in line because of Blade 2,
Hmm.
which is a great movie, you know.
Yeah.
He turned down that as well as Alien vs Predator, which we had both talked about this. I just think like that would have been so fantastic to see this director known for putting like creatures into his movie direct a creature feature like Aliens vs Predator or Alien vs Predator. That would have been
It
awesome.
might have actually been good.
Right, right. And then he turned down Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban in 2004 to work on his dream project Hellboy. Right? He loved Hellboy, still loves it. And in fact, like even to this day, even 2 months ago, Ron Perlman is like, "Hey, Del Toro, get off your ass and let's make Hellboy 3." You know, and I'm like, "Oh, he's doing a lot." You know, like he's not
Oh,
sitting around.
he is
You
so
know,
busy. He's always got
yeah.
10,000 projects that he's attached to at any given point in
He
time.
Yeah, just the writing credits alone, like he wrote. Well, say what you will about the movies, but he wrote The Hobbit, co-wrote that, you know, for the screen.
Hmm.
So say what you will about how the movies hold up, but still, I mean, that's a pretty big deal for him to have a credit for that. He was actually supposed to direct them, anyways. So jump forward 4 years, he turns down I Am Legend. God, that would have been a great one too. There's
Yeah,
so
that
many
might have actually been
projects.
good too.
Yeah, there's so many projects that he turned down where I'm like, man, I would have loved to see that if he got his hands on it, you know? So I Am Legend, One Missed Call, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. He got offered another Harry Potter movie. He turned all those down to work on Hellboy 2. That's how much he loves Hellboy.
Wow.
So crazy. And also, I'm pretty sure it's because like Ron Perlman and Del Toro are like really good friends. So it's all like Ron Perlman has been in like 4 or 5 of Del Toro's movies. You know, Blade to the Hellboy movies, Nightmare Alley. Oh, this one, 5. You know,
Okay.
so uh, he's also a little eccentric with his collecting, like another person we kind of like a little, which is Nicolas Cage. This guy's movie collection, movie and comic book collection is so massive that he has a second home just for his movie and comic book collection. Just for those, right?
Wow.
Just like fill your house up with movies and comic books, Brian, and it'd still be probably smaller than this director's second
I
home
believe
just
it
for
would
his.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. But then here's like another weird thing that I found, which is kind of more serious. Like the first 3 were like lighthearted, but like so he had like international breakthrough with like some of his movies, and he was becoming more of like a named director. How you
Hmm.
get to a certain point where it's like, oh, this is the next movie by this guy. I'm gonna see it just because he made it or woman, you know.
Hmm.
So he had that like international breakthrough where people were beginning to know him, and then his dad was kidnapped because of it and held for ransom for 72 days. Now
This is
this
in
was
Mexico.
yeah, and because that's where he's from, and held for 72 days, um, was struggling to pay the ransom, you know, and come to find out, James Cameron of all people helped get the money together to pay these people so that Del Toro could get his dad back from these kidnappers, which is like mind blowing to me.
Wow.
You know, this was back in 97, so this would have been around Mimic, I guess, you know, but that's so terrifying that, like, because you became famous and because that's where you came from, like, your dad was kidnapped for money. Like that's like insane. And then on top of that, James Cameron of all people coming in to save the day. So they must have had some sort of like awesome friendship, because like that just is not going to happen unless you have like deep ties with that person, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
That was really awesome of him. So even though like James Cameron cannot release The Abyss on 4K, I don't know, I think a little bit better of him that he got Del Toro's dad back. You know, that's what I'm saying. So he went up
Okay.
a couple notches, you know.
Well, I'm good. There's some solve for that wound.
Yeah.
The scuttlebutt on that is that once Avatar comes out, or maybe slightly before the new Avatar comes out, that they're going to put out the original Avatar in 4K, as well as some of his other movies that have gotten 4K treatments
Jeez.
because of renewed interest. Because I had heard, and I wasn't able to confirm this, but I had heard that it was on HBO at a certain point in time, and then it was like taken off.
The Abyss?
And True Lies.
Yeah, The Abyss popped back up on either Stars or Cinemax right now, but
Yeah,
it's not the
4K version.
Right, and also not the extended edition,
Yeah.
you know, which I'm going to harp on that. Like people need to see that movie, that version. The Abyss theatrical
That should
run's
be
a
the only
good
version.
movie. It's
Yeah,
a good movie. But the extended one is great, you know.
There's very few times where I feel like those extended versions are transformative in any meaningful way, and not just like, oh, okay, that was more of something that I already was in sympathy with. Um, I'll never watch the theatrical version of The Abyss
Nope.
again. Like that's how different the context of that is, especially at the end, where it matters. Like
Right. Like it's so crazy. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I don't want to talk about it because it's one of those things, even though the movie it was made in 88 or 89, right? But I feel like so few people have actually seen that version where it's like this is the one time where it's like I want it to come out so people can see that version without knowing anything about it, you know? So you're welcome, internet.
you were kind of harping on this for being, you know, is ostensibly an animated movie.
Not harping on it, but I was just saying like you get to a certain point where it's like there's so much CGI involved in a single shot or sequences that it's like, well, it's less that it's moving towards like just an animated movie. But I know that there's a difference.
Well,
you know?
yeah, and yet there was a company that did an extensive amount of miniatures for this.
Okay.
So one shot that I didn't know was actually real was when the fist punches through the office building.
Yeah. And it hits the
it
ball
that was dumb, but
yeah.
Punching through the building, that was actually a quarter scale office model.
No like, shit.
Just
of all things.
Just think about that. A quarter scale of a real building is still really freaking big. And then the fist was an actual like hydraulic thing that they punched through the model.
That's amazing. Just to put that in reference, like it's usually 10 to 12 feet per floor. So if it's 10 stories, it's still over 25 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how big their miniatures are. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it might have been that floor. So if the floor is then that's still like a 3 foot tall.
Right. Yeah.
3-4 foot, whatever it is. Yeah, that's massive.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then there's like another shot where one of the Jaegers gets thrown down on a stadium, and that was a mini. I'm pretty sure the robot was probably CG, but the stadium was like a miniature, like another quarter scale miniature, and they're just like blowing it apart with air cannons and different pyrotechnics and stuff like that.
It must have been a blast to be on set when they had miniatures and they're like, here's our fake stuff that we're going to put yeah. Yeah. Must have been a blast. Yeah. Yeah, I get it now. I see what you did there.
Walked right into that one.
Oh man, no, I love this movie.
And in the time that they had, because one of the other things that I came across was that the movie was shot in 103 days, whereas previously the shortest turnaround shooting schedule that Del Toro had was 115 days, which, it sounds like a lot, but when you've got a movie that's this complicated with this many special effects and so many different departments and units filming on it at one point in time, the level of that man really has his brain together. It's astounding, because it's not just the 5,000 projects that he's working on at any given point in time. It's to make a movie this complex in 103 days, which is just barely over 3 months. He was working 18, 20-hour days for the whole time.
Yeah. And that's even after, because he's like kind of known for really pre-visualizing like every little detail, all this stuff. And he even talks about like even detail that he puts into it. Like he was talking in some, maybe it was a commentary track or a making of, he was talking about how he even likes to have details like logos. He's like, yeah, someone designed that logo on purpose. It's not just something we pulled from here and, kind of kit bashed some visual reference. It's like, no, people were designing all this stuff. But he is thinking about all of these things like to the littlest amount of detail, so that when it's time to pull the trigger and start filming, it's like, well, all that stuff's in place. We're just kind of sticking to the plan all the way through, So
which is easier said than done, because things can and do go haywire all the time.
I'm making it sound so simple that if you just plan everything out, like you can make a movie.
It just happens. Yeah.
Yeah. No. But I'm saying that, like, I think he's obsessive about planning it out, So
well, his craftsmanship is meticulous. I think the way that I would put that, and I think that really shows, because he's one of the best damn craftsmen, not only in genre films but in all of filmmaking. It's just that he happens to enjoy genre movies, and bless his heart.
Right. Yes. I think there's only like one that I was not really loving of his.
Mimic,
that was
you said.
Mimic is fine. I own it and I'll watch it from time to time, but it was Crimson Peak that is like the one that I'm like, it's not hitting me like all those other movies. Yeah. But then like the rest of them are great, but I have not seen Nightmare Alley yet. So, which is his newest.
Well, but yeah, I just saw this for the first time, so now I haven't seen his other newer ones.
Well, and also, side note, do not watch Pacific Rim Uprising. It is not good.
That's what I've heard, and as much as I enjoyed this, I think I'm fine with there not being a sequel to it.
Yes.
Because if there was a sequel, you would have to kind of expand on some of these things that you just sort of went with in this one. And I don't need that.
Nope.
Is that basically what the second one kind of did? Or was it just like, well, let's do the story again? Like, we blew up the breach, but they're back somehow. Oh, we got to talk about that before we sign off.
I can spoil it.
That,
because I don't think it's a movie worth seeing.
Tell me off air. I don't. Okay. I don't want.
All right. I'll tell you as soon as we get off here.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe we put up a bonus of me spoiling the movie for you.
So,
anyways, continue.
They knew where the monsters were coming from this whole time, because they've tried to destroy it before.
Yes.
So that got me thinking, like, how come they didn't have any defenses posted up around that thing? It's like
That's a good question.
They waited they waited for the monsters to come to them before they deployed the it's not something I was thinking about when I was watching the movie, but like today I was like, hey, that's kind of convenient. Like,
And they just put a sewer cap on it.
I would think if there's this big massive hole in the ground that you'd have that thing surrounded with guns or whatever, and like anything that pokes its head out, just like bah, 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 you're just gonna.
It's just like a nuclear explosion going off every 20 minutes under the water.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Well, we had another attempted kaiju breach.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know. I never questioned that ever until right now. But yeah, they could have had defenses everywhere, because like the Shatter Dome, where they just store the garage where they store the Jaegers, has a bunch of defenses. So they knew that they have to defend themselves.
Right.
Why not bring it right to them?
Yeah, no. Instead, we're going to build the life wall.
But no,
or
that's something that you could make fun of. But there's this one guy. He has one line in the whole movie, right? And it's like, because they build the wall and then a kaiju comes, it's like, fuck your wall,
Yeah.
But then one guy goes in the back, he goes, what are we building this for?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I heard that. That was good.
So I'm like, there you go. Because it's people trying to have a good idea go forward because they think it'll help when it doesn't. And we see that in life all the time, where it's like, I know you're just going to go forward because you think it's a good idea, but it's really a bad idea. Right. And we all know it's a bad idea because we just saw how bad of an idea it actually is. So walls, not going to stop the kaiju. But yeah, the guy in the background, all the way in the back, is right. Why are we building this wall?
Well,
no, yeah. Defenses in the ocean would be a good plan moving forward. Yeah. Just keep that in mind when this happens to us in real life. Put the defenses underwater immediately.
Yep.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I think we've said it. I think it's worth checking out if you haven't seen it, which I'm probably the last horse to cross the finish line on that one.
Possibly.
But it's a movie that I would show like younger people that haven't really seen, like, because it's like modern, but it's still like a movie that they probably haven't seen or heard of, because it's not some mega franchise.
Right. And they don't have to spend too much time like knowing a backstory or where things have come from or anything like that. And also I think certain types of even Godzilla movies, don't get mad at me, internet, but I think it's like coffee, where it's like you kind of have to get an acquired taste for it and kind of understand the humor a little bit and warm up to that before you can really appreciate like the filmmaking side of it, And also, I think for some people, the price, like, it's too much. It costs too much. Like, the price of admission is too high because they're looking at a guy in a rubber suit instead of a real life looking monster. Does that make sense?
A photoreal CGI.
Yeah. So that's my argument. Sorry. I still think they're great, but it is just a guy in a suit,
Well, and I was going to say that I wouldn't have been, because this was Legendary Pictures, which makes the Godzilla movies now, and I would have been like, oh, is this like what they took for like proof of concept for like, this is why you should trust Americans with making this Godzilla movie that's currently going on? And now it was probably in the works before that, because the very next year was when the Cranston Godzilla came out. So it wouldn't have been something that you could. I mean, I'm sure that they pointed to this and be like, see, we know what we're doing, but it wasn't like, hey, because of this, we just landed Godzilla and turned it around in a year. Didn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I think Del Toro would love to know that this is the reason why I've watched other Godzilla movies beyond Matthew Broderick, because of this one. Which I think served his purpose because he wanted to emulate the stuff he saw.
And he wanted to introduce a new generation to mecha and kaiju movies.
Yes. Yeah. So success. You did it. Because now I own like 6 Japanese Godzilla movies. I think about 10 altogether total with the other Godzilla stuff, So yes, great. Love it. I'm probably gonna watch it again in short succession. So
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Post Credits Podcast. I'd say it's a fantastic episode, but we're talking about kind of a bummer movie, and I am not feeling it right now today or
ever.
Anytime I've watched this, and I have hate watched this, like, I shit you not, probably 20 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a one and done type of guy with this one.